This story begins with a child who was kidnapped, but what makes it interesting is that this child was saved thanks to the help of previous victims who had died via a haunted phone call. How is the story? Prepare your favorite snacks and drinks, because the story is about to begin. Starting from the story of a child who was often bullied by his friends is now dealing with kidnappers who have been roaming the city many times.
See the sign? It says boys.
His name is Finney and his younger sister Gwen. They have a temperamental father who is sensitive to sound. One bright morning, Gwen, his younger sister, had to accept a whipping from her father regarding several police coming to her workplace and interrogating her, even though in the interrogation the police only asked her how her sister had behaved lately, because Gwen once said that she dreamed that someone named Bruce Yamada would be kidnapped, and sure enough it happened. And sure enough, Finney's friend who often defended him when he was bullied was now kidnapped. News said that the kidnapper used a black van and left a black balloon. All adults at this time searched the entire city, but the results were empty. When Finney was going home he saw a black van but did not suspect anything at all. Suddenly, a liquid anesthetic was inserted into his mouth and immediately Finn was unconscious. Finney was held captive in a house that had an airtight basement. This is where the beginning of Finney's life experience began. In the room there was only a toilet, a mattress and a telephone with a broken cable, meaning the telephone could not be used. When Gwen was at her mother's house she heard news that her brother was the target of a kidnapping. Back to Finney who was being kidnapped, the telephone rang but no one answered. The kidnapper said the telephone often rang but when it was answered there was no sound at all. The telephone rang, at first there was no sound and it turned out. The telephone rang again for a long time and someone answered.
Don't hang up.
The first caller was Finney's baseball teammate, Bruce Yamada. Bruce is the son of a Chinese descendant who is now an American citizen. He has a dream of playing baseball famously. He said the path to the ceramic toilet below was fragile so Finney could open the ceramic and dig a hole to trap the kidnapper. But Bruce's help couldn't help him. In the morning when the masked Kong alias the kidnapper came to deliver breakfast, the phone rang again. This time it came from a young newspaper delivery man. In the phone call he said not to go up there, it was a trap. When the masked Kong left, apparently he didn't lock the door, giving him a chance to run. But Billy said never to go up the stairs. He continued, the masked Kong was waiting for you upstairs holding a buckle. Finney tried to go up the stairs slowly so as not to be caught, and sure enough, the uncle was ready just like Billy the newspaper delivery man had said. Finney decided against his intention and preferred to eat the breakfast he brought. The phone rang again, still Billy. In the conversation he said you can try to escape from the window but first take the rope and swing the rope to the window so that it opens and you can run. He tried, kept trying but only the first layer opened, but why didn't he think of throwing the bottle into the window? Gwen, Finney's sister, apparently had received 2 clues from her dream. She told her father about her dream. Gwen hoped that with the clue they could find the kidnapper. The third time the phone rang, who knows where, but he died in torture to the left. From the contents of the phone call it said that the kidnapper was sleeping but you have to be careful because when he wakes up there is no mercy for you. Behind him there is a door that has a code. You can try the code that I have written on the right side of the wall. And sure enough the code on the wall was true. The lock opened and that was his chance to run. But unfortunately his attempt was not successful. No matter how fast he ran he was still defeated by the car that was chasing him. The phone rang again, this time it was from the most naughty young man at that time. His name was Hopper. He ordered to break down the wall right next to the toilet. There was an object made of iron but you had to open all the bolts. Sure enough after the wall was broken it turned out to lead to the cupboard where the meat was stored, but unfortunately the cupboard was locked from the outside. The phone rang again. This was the last victim before Finn, Robin. The person who always helped him from bullying. As a respected young man in the city, Robin taught Finn self-defense using a telephone receiver. Not only that, the deceased also said to fill the phone with soil because this was the last call from that phone. On the other hand, Gwen was looking for clues from her dream. When it was raining heavily suddenly she was surprised by young men covered in wounds standing in front of her. They turned out to tell where the house Gwen meant. Finally the house was found. Gwen immediately rushed back home and called the detective. Here's the tense part. It turns out the kidnapper has a sibling. Since the beginning she was suspicious of her brother, who was often noisy downstairs, as if something was being hidden. At that time his brother was going to work while buying tools to torture Finn. The door opened. How surprised he was that all this time his hunch was right, that there was something wrong there. But this time his brother couldn't help him. Coincidentally with the kidnapper, he was already behind him and without further ado immediately finished off his brother. Back to Gwen, who had reported the police. They quickly entered the house and searched the entire house, but what they found were the graves of the kidnapping victims. Meanwhile, Finney was ready to fight the kidnapper. The kidnapper's uncle said that Finney was a special child to him, so he would spend a lot of time having fun with him. A dog as big as Bagon was also called and tied near the door so that his target could not escape. The fight ensued. Finney ran to the toilet and stepped over the excavation he had made and pulled the rope so that the uncle fell and entered the trap. When he was trapped there, Finney hit him with a telephone receiver that had been filled with soil. Towards the end of his life the telephone rang, containing words from the victims he had tortured. At the end of the story a plot twist is shown. It turns out that the kidnapper's house is not the place that the police searched, but the house right in front of it. So there are two houses, one used to bury the victim and the other as a place of confinement.